Hello and welcome to What to Read Today. Today I bring you a book that is simply put heartbreaking. It's a book about the Sierra Leonean Civil War and one woman's story of how the war affected her, her family, and made her a refugee in Australia. The book is Rising Heart by Aminata Conteh Bigger. Brutally kidnapped from her father's house by rebel soldiers, resettled in Australia as a refugee, now helping mothers and babies in Sierra Leone. For those of you who don't know, Sierra Leone is in Africa, okay? This book, can I please say up front, it's heart-wrenching. It is a sad book, not all of it, but it is very vivid in its description of the war. It's vivid in its description of a woman and other women and children who were viciously molested, brutally, fatally killed. So before I go any further, if this is something you are not keen to be introduced to, or you think your stomach can't stomach things like this, you now have the opportunity to stop this video, please. For the rest of us, Rising Hearts will make you cry. In fact, there is this quote by the Honorable Dame Quentin Bryce: "The best and worst of our shared humanity, breathtaking and heartbreaking." Beautiful quotes. And that is exactly what this book is. It is both breathtaking and heartbreaking. This is the story of Aminata. She's the one here. That's what she looks like. Who was 18 years old at the time the Civil War broke out in her home country, Sierra Leone. And during the Civil War, she was kidnapped from her father's house. In fact, she was kidnapped or taken away while holding on to her father, as a young girl. And the rebels took her. For many months, she and other young women and children that were abducted were moved from villages to villages, from different locations, running away from the government forces, the government military, trying to bring an end to the war. The war in Sierra Leone went on for over a decade, from 1991 to 2001, 2002. See, this book tells you about the worst of us, the very worst of us, and also the redemption that humans can provide to their fellow humans. Aminata is taken from her home. She is brutally molested. If you understand that word in every context, every day, by different men. At some point, she becomes pregnant and loses the child. This book tells you about a father's love. Reading this book, I was so much in awe of how much her father loved her and all the surrounding, she describes what it meant to grow up back home in Sierra Leone, their family dynamics, what the father did, her mother, her siblings. It was a beautiful story of a childhood that was beautiful until the war. A story of how people looked out for each other. Those who had helped those who didn't have much. But the war took away everything from her. And then when she was released thankfully, through a different miraculous story on its own, she was released and reunited with her family in Sierra Leone. She went on to live in Guinea, Conakry, where her mother is from. So Guinea is a different African country. And because she had to go, because she had a fear that one of the rebels who was severely, unbelievably obsessed with her, an 18-year-old girl, might come looking for her to take her away or to make her one of his wives. So she had to leave the country, even after being released, and moved to Guinea to live with her mother and her family. But somehow she decided she wanted to leave the country or Africa as a whole. Her life was shattered. She was a different person. You can imagine a young 18-year-old girl who looked at the world from the eyes of purity, from the eyes of kindness, from the eyes of all is good, all is beautiful. And what having to live with rebels and your kidnappers, your abductors for months, and just being used, what it does to your psyche. And so she leaves. Thankfully, she gets a visa, a refugee visa, and she moves to Australia. That's a different story entirely, moving to Australia and by herself and her sister. But the loneliness, the homesickness, and just trying to navigate this new world she had never heard about before. She talks about not even knowing or hearing about Australia prior to moving or applying for the visa, and how initially she was treated in a way that is not very polite or positive. She made some friends who helped her through those difficulties. But then there is the good news. Aminata falls in love and has her own children. She has two children and she's married to this French guy. Oui, comment ça va? And they've both built a home or a life in Australia here. But she has never forgotten where she came from, where she comes from. So she sets up, and that's where this book invites us, the reader, to all of these things have happened to you, to me, to us. How are we able to navigate through all of that negativity, all of that evil, all of that sadness, and still build something beautiful? Aminata has opened up a Aminata Maternal Foundation back in Sierra Leone. I was surprised to hear that as much as 1 in 8 babies die at childbirth. That's a very stark statistics, very heartbreaking. And that Sierra Leone is a very poor country. That aside anyway, she has gone back to give to her local community, irrespective of the war and what that war should have done to her. Aminata chose forgiveness. She chose, I'm going to outgrow or come out of this stronger. I'm going to show out of all of this evil, I'm still capable of good. She started this foundation where she helps women deliver babies safely. And even outside of that, she still carries on her father's legacy of wanting to do good to those around you. That's her father, Conteh, and her mother. You can see some of these old photos giving you the 1960s, 1970s vibe, what they wore and what they looked like at the time, their fashion. Her grandfather, her siblings, the war. I was sad many days after reading this book. I was really sad because in one way, I thought justice had not been done. Her abductor, I think just for one person, was is in jail or was in jail at the time of her writing this book. But there was a particular figure, who really abused her and who was obsessed with her, which it may seem after reading this book that he's, walking free in the society. And my heart really breaks just knowing that. But Aminata is wherever you are, it doesn't matter. I am free. I'm not going to be held in fear or the shackles of what might be or what you might do to me. I really recommend this book, not for the faint-hearted. Before you read, please confirm you want or you are able to come face to face with very vivid description of the war and what was done to Aminata during the war. Also confirm that this wouldn't take away from you your trust in humanity, because you can read books like this and it does make you feel, what's the point? What's the point? All of this striving and wanting to achieve. But Aminata reminds us we can and should make out something good from our situation and experiences. I do recommend, grab a copy, Rising Hearts by Aminata Conteh Bigger. Until next time on What to Read Today, keep well and keep reading. Take care.